This is Personal Injury Court.
Good day, everyone. This is Brown versus Horowitz. It's my understanding, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, that you all are suing Mr. Horowitz for failing to put in a floor at your jazz club. You went there and you stepped into your jazz club and fell into the basement, suffering terrible injuries. You're asking this court to award $100,000 for your medical bills, $50,000 for future medical bills, $200,000 for pain and suffering, for a total of $350,000. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Horowitz, it's your position, based on what you filed with this court, that they should not have been there that night. Had they done what they were supposed to do, he would have never been injured, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, well, let's get into the legal sauce. Now, Mr. Brown, tell me what happened.
Your Honor, I had a dream, and my dream was to create and open my own jazz club. Because I'm a jazz musician. I want a place where my friends can come jam, and I could bring some of my famous friends to come in and perform.
You're touching me in my heart. I play a saxophone, and I was a jazz DJ when I was in college.
Oh, that's okay.
So you got your jazz club.
Yeah,
Talk to me.
so how I got to know Mr. Horowitz here is through my wife, who is in real estate.
How much work were you going to have to do on this club to get it ready?
Oh, the club needed a lot of work. It was an old building. She was able to help secure a good deal on.
Total renovation.
So, Mr. Horowitz, you remember when they hired you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what did you understand you were supposed to do?
Well, sir, you know, I own Horowitz Construction, and we believe in the American
How
dream.
long y'all been in business?
20 years, sir.
So
Proud
you've
of
been doing this a while.
Yeah, generations. My grandfather was in construction during the Depression, so, you know, we got construction in our blood. We got
Yes, sir.
sawdust in our veins, Your Honor.
Yes, that's what my dad used to say.
The Browns came to us, and, you know, they was talking about their dream, and the more he got passionate about it, the more I got passionate about it. Because
So you
I like to
believed in
share
this
the
project?
dreams. I believe in the dreams.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Brown, your dream turned somehow into a nightmare. How did this happen?
My wife wanted to see the building, and particularly the sunken floor. So we were out and about on a date night we try to have every now and then. And we were not far from the building. And we arrived at the building. I had my key, walked in through the front door. I stepped in. Your Honor, I fell down 20 feet into the basement.
Was your wife next to you with this? Miss Brown,
She was behind me.
Did you
I fell
see
on
this?
a pile of rubble.
Yes, Your
As you
Honor.
can see on that picture, of all the construction trash. I fell on top of all that.
So you fell through this
scaffold,
hole?
The nails, the mud, everything.
Yes, Your Honor.
I thought dead.
It was awful. I tried to reach for him. I dropped my phone. I was panicking and screaming. Blood was everywhere.
I guess when you hit this debris, you realized you were pretty badly hurt.
Your Honor, I thought I was gone.
A passerby heard me screaming, so they called 911. They had to put a crane down in the basement to get my husband up.
That's all I could remember.
The doctor told us to call our pastor for his last rites. That's how awful it was.
Mr. Horowitz, you see this is pretty bad stuff, right?
Oh, yes, sir. In the 20 years that I've run that construction company, we've never had an incident, neither client nor worker has ever had an accident quite like
Your
that.
Honor,
Now, why do you
was-
think that is, that you haven't had an incident in 20 years?
That's because I practice safety all the time, Your Honor. That's construction. It's always hazardous. So
Well,
I put
Mr. and
safety
Mrs.
in
Brown, you
everything
all
else.
knew that your place wasn't finished, right?
We knew it was supposed to be finished from what I've seen already, because I visited the site like 3 days earlier. And
Clearly, you thought the floor was there.
Right,
Yes,
exactly.
So
exactly.
why wouldn't that be reasonable for them to expect that the floor is there?
Well, Your Honor, at the very beginning of all this, we set out blueprints for the client to look at.
Okay.
So they can approve them. That's how we do. So we make sure we're all on the same page.
Now, you've
Those are
submitted
them right
something.
there.
Is this the blueprint you're
Yes,
talking
sir, it
about?
is.
Now, walk me through this. What are we looking at here?
This is the blueprints for the jazz club itself.
Okay.
You see the stage area, the dance area. Over here we got the dining and the bar and
This is a
everything.
nice place.
Now that's where the sunken floor is supposed to go in.
And where it says front door.
Now this front door is right here by the sunken door because it's part of the lobby. It's part of the entranceway.
Mr. and Mrs.
Now-
Brown, you all went in the front door?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, when you all got to the property, was the door locked?
It was
Yes,
locked,
it was
but we have a
locked.
key.
We have a key.
Well, didn't that tell you
Now,
something?
Your Honor, 3 days ago.
No, sir.
I can't hear them when you talk in my ear.
No.
So when you got there, the door was locked.
Well, it's supposed to be locked, Your Honor. I mean, he's not there, so he locks it up when he leaves. But there was no sign, there was no yellow tape, there was nothing saying that we could not enter.
So if the door is locked and they have a key, isn't it reasonable that they go into a place that they own?
I don't understand why they would come in over here when 3 days beforehand he knew that there was a construction entrance right here in the back. And he could come in here. Matter of fact, that's where he came.
Mr. Horowitz, you may go back to your podium.
I did go through the back door. I glanced at everything. Everything appeared to be in order and everything.
But was there a floor when you went in 3 days before?
The area that covered where the sunken floor is was closed off. So there's no way for me to have known that.
So you didn't go through the front door that time, the few days before.
No, Your Honor.
Did you even go near the front door? Did you see anything near the
Yes,
front
Your Honor.
door?
I did see 3 days prior to the accident a sign that said, "Do not enter with the tape, do not cross."
So
It
now,
wasn't on there the day we went.
on the night in question, was there a sign there?
No, Your Honor.
Nothing at all. No tape, no sign, nothing.
Your Honor, if you saw that building the night we went there, you think it was open for business.
Yes.
There's no indication that it was a construction site. According to the schedule, this floor was supposed to have been done by week 7. When we arrived, it was week 9.
So there's no way there should
And
not
the
have been a
floor
floor.
still wasn't there.
But Mr. and Mrs. Brown, you can't just walk into a place at night, whether you own it or not, and just assume that it's all right.
Well, Your Honor, all due respect, we weren't informed about any delays or any issues.
And
I did inform you that there was going to be a delay.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I
No,
did.
you
Your Honor,
How?
we have a
Well,
contract.
I haven't seen a construction project that was on time.
Well, sir, he did not let us know.
He didn't let us know.
Your Honor, he didn't let us know if there was any delays or anything.
At all.
Now, Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
now, as you've already stated, it's hard to stay on a schedule in construction.
Yes, sir.
Mainly because a lot of times it's not our fault.
Right.
We get behind. Sometimes it's about the weather.
Change orders, things of that sort.
Things of that sort. Now, in this particular case, it was about supply and demand.
Well, you have to communicate that with us.
It was.
Yes.
Tell me about supply and demand.
I'll tell you about supply and demand, Your Honor.
Because it's not easy for contractors.
No, when we got to that part about the sunken floor, we'd
Okay.
already started the demo. Then we get a call from our supplier saying that the type of wood we need.
And
was
see, that's not in
there.
your control.
Yeah, that's beyond our control. So
Now,
instead
did
of
you
just
let the
stopping-
Browns know that?
Yes, sir, I did.
And so how did you let them know?
I let them know through telephone, voicemail.
Did you ever get the voicemail?
Yes, Your Honor, after the fact.
So
After he was injured.
he did leave a voicemail. Y'all just didn't pick it up until later.
Right, as I
well, that's not
explained
my fault,
earlier.
Your Honor.
So had you picked it up, you would have known that this floor was not finished.
Your Honor, there were multiple ways he could have got in contact with us, not just leaving a voicemail.
But he tried.
But there's other ways, Your Honor. He could have emailed, he could have texted, he could have done anything.
And once again, the
See, it
sign
just-
was removed from the front door.
If it's
It said,
something
"Do
that
not sign."
serious, you would reach out.
It just seems to me that if you had picked up the voicemail, you wouldn't have $100,000 of medical expenses. I see on the plasma there's a week schedule. Now, if you go according to this schedule, Mr. Horowitz, by week 9, the end of week 9, you're done, right?
That's the way it's supposed to work out.
Yes.
Yes,
So
sir.
at the time when the Browns walked through their front door, what week were we in?
We were in week 9, Your Honor.
So the floor should have been installed by week 7.
Yes, sir. Like I said, we had a problem getting the wood in on time.
And you
after we
tried to
started
let
the
them
demo.
know that.
I did try to let them know that. And in the meantime, what we did was, instead of stopping our work and sitting on our hands waiting for wood and delaying the entire schedule, we went ahead and worked on all the other things that we could have worked on.
You sound like a good contractor.
I try to work hard. I work hard for my money. I work hard for my family. I
Yes,
work
sir.
hard for these people who want to see their dreams come true. That's what I'm all about, Your
Well, you
Honor.
wouldn't be
I'm
in
about
business
making
20
the
years
dream.
if you didn't. So, Mr. Brown, you and Mrs. Brown step through, you fall into the hole, 911 is called. At some point, you realize the extent of your injuries. What are they?
Got fractured shoulder. My hip was replaced.
You're a relatively young man. How old are you?
I'm 44, Your Honor.
So you had a hip replacement at 44. Tell
Yes,
me
Your
about
Honor.
your shoulder.
My shoulder was fractured as well.
To understand your injuries, I want to talk to Dr. Karen Flood. We're going to bring her in and let her explain this to us. So, Sheriff, would you get Dr. Flood for us?
Yes, Your Honor.
Hello, Doctor.
Hello, Your Honor.
Would you state your name for the record?
My name is Dr. Karen Flood. I'm an orthopedic surgeon.
And, Doctor, what does an orthopedic surgeon do?
Well, we fix bones and joints. So anywhere from the shoulders out and from the hips down, and there's also orthopedic spine surgeons.
Now, will you explain to me the nature and severity of Mr. Brown's injuries?
Yes, Your Honor. When Mr. Brown fell, he suffered multiple injuries, as you know. He broke his shoulder, he broke his wrist, and he also broke his right hip joint. And the right hip is what is the most concerning of his injuries. The reason for that is the hip is a ball and socket joint. And what he did was he knocked the ball right off the thigh bone. And when you do that, the blood supply to the femoral head, the ball part, can get disrupted, and then the bone actually dies.
So this was bad stuff.
This is a big deal.
How exactly do you repair an injury like that?
Well, in most cases, we actually replace the hip. I've got a video if you'd like to see it.
I would. Please take us through this.
So this is the patient getting ready for surgery. You see we've got them all positioned here on the table. They've got their feet in traction. Here's the hip joint up here. So he's done the work for me. He's knocked the hip joint off. And now I'm going to replace it by putting a broach down inside the thigh bone that opens up a hole in the thigh unless we put the actual hip replacement down into the joint. So
now, do you pound that thing down into the thigh?
I do. We have a mallet that knocks it down in. And then we replace the hip socket first by reaming out that socket and then relocate the hip. But you have to dislocate the hip in order to replace it. You put it back in place, and then that allows you to get a little bit of motion back in your hip.
He's 44 years old. How common is it that you get a hip replacement?
Well, it's not as common, and the problem with that, of course, is this hip is eventually going to wear out. About another 20 years, he's probably going to need to get it replaced.
So around the time he's about to retire, he's going to have a hip replacement.
He's going to have another hip replacement. That one's harder because I have to take out more bone in order to do that. You take more. So every time you do it, it's a more complicated procedure.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
You may be released. So, Mr. Horowitz, you see that this has been very heavy for the Browns, right?
Yes, sir, I do.
And these folks, regardless of where you assign fault, he's going to be dealing with this for a while. Does your heart get touched on that?
Well, of course it does, Your Honor. I mean, when I found out what happened and I saw the incident report, I was horrified. In all honesty, I mean, if he hadn't walked in where he wasn't supposed to be, then none of this would have happened to him. I made it plainly clear to him that it was dangerous
to
be in there.
What happened to the sign that was on the door 3 days before? He took it off, Your Honor.
Well,
The do not cross sign, why was that removed? That place was ready for business.
That place was not ready for business.
The front door was painted, Your Honor.
When I do construction, I'm the one.
Order in this court. Mr. Horowitz, I can see that you tried to warn the Browns. You
Yes,
locked
sir.
the door, you tried to call them.
Yes, sir.
I can imagine this was shocking and disappointing to you.
I mean, I'd never had anything like this ever happen. I've never had a client just show up at the job site at night when nobody is there and just let themselves in.
It's our building.
Until this construction is done, and I say it's safe, you shouldn't even be going in there without any kind of escort,
It was supposed to
including
be
me.
finished.
Order in this court. Folks, I think I've heard everything I need to hear. I'm ready to make my decision. In every personal injury case, the plaintiff has to prove 3 things. The plaintiff has to prove that the defendant did something wrong and that wrong caused your injuries. Clearly, you were injured from this terrible fall at your club. Here, you all reasonably thought that the floor was in because, according to the schedule, it should have been in. You all went in expecting to be excited, imagining all the dancing on the floor, and you fell down 20 feet into a basement with horrible injuries. Mr. Horowitz, when you left that night, you had no idea that this tragedy would happen because you put certain safeguards in place. You locked the door and you left them a voicemail saying, hey, not finished, don't go in the place, but they didn't pick it up. And because they didn't pick it up, you believe it's their fault. Well, here the law takes a global approach to the evidence. That is, I consider everything. You all have proven that there was something wrong. Clearly, you've proven you're injured and that the wrong caused your injuries. Mr. Horowitz, I find that you tried to warn the Browns. You not only locked the door, but you actually got on the phone and called them trying to leave a message to say, don't go into the place. Now, they didn't pick that message up, and they should have. However, I think you should have done more. You should have warned them. You should have put tape over this door, done whatever it took to avoid a man nearly falling to his death. And in that regard, I find you 100% responsible, and I'm going to award you all every penny of what you seek. $100,000 for past medicals, $50,000 for future medicals, and $200,000 for pain and suffering, for a total award of $350,000. That is my final verdict, and this matter is adjourned. Our attorneys across America just viewed this case for the first time. Let's hear what Andrew Finkelstein has to say.
I think the orthopedic surgeon did an outstanding job of explaining what happened to the plaintiff in this fall, as well as what had to be done to treat his injuries. An area of personal injury claims that can often be overlooked involves future medical needs, what type of treatment may be necessary in the future, and how much that will cost. All of this should be presented into evidence so a fair settlement or verdict can be reached.
This is the matter of Richardson versus Black. Mr. Richardson, it's my understanding that you suffered a number of injuries on a group adventure that Mr. Black arranged, and you're asking this court to award you $45,000 for medical expenses in the past, $15,000 for future medical expenses, and $29,000 for lost wages, for a total of $89,000. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Black, you believe that had he not been so adventurous, he wouldn't have any injuries, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
He's responsible for his own injuries as you see it.
100%, yes, sir.
All right, well, let's get into the legal sauce. How long have you known Mr. Black?
I've known Mr. Black for probably about a year now. See, I'm a very adventurous, outdoorsy person. I've always been that way. And so I went on social media and I found this group called the Mountain Adventure Squad.
Okay.
And I read the description. They had similar goals to me. They wanted to hike all the peaks in the state, maybe a through hike in the future. Like, these are my goals too. This is a perfect group. So I messaged the leader, Dean Black here, and we talked for a while, and he seemed like a good dude. He is a good dude. And we just got together.
That's why you're suing me.
How did you end up starting this group?
So I've been hiking, the first time I went was with my daddy when I was like 5 years old. So I've been on the mountain, I've been in caves, I've been in rivers, I've been everywhere since I was about 5 years old. And I kind of, here recently, I really wanted to share my passion more with people. So you live
outdoors?
Yes, sir. So I decided to start me like a little group and find some people who kind of enjoying the same thing. And that's my mass group, really enjoy it.
So Mr. Richardson, what kind of adventures were you looking for? You mentioned hiking.
Hiking, climbing, all sorts of adventures, camping, anything that we could do to get us outside and to get us the thrill of an adventure, really.
So Mr. Black, this was your adventure. You put this together, right?
That is correct, sir, yes.
Well, what were you all supposed to be doing out there?
I mean, really just having fun, observing nature, enjoying a hike. I don't know about all this danger talk, but yeah, we were out there just having fun, enjoying a hike.
Well, hiking around the mountains and doing things out in nature, there are dangers, right?
There are dangers, yes, sir, but controlled dangers is the way I would put it.
And
so, controlled dangers.
So, Mr. Richardson, what's the thrill for you?
The thrill? Your Honor, I don't know if you've ever been on top of a mountain. Here.
I'm acrophobic, so never.
No roller coasters, anything? Well, when you're that close to something that is as big as a mountain, it's just, you feel so small. It's almost like a pleasurable existentialism. It's just, you're so small and the world's so big, just gives you a visceral rush.
Really connects you with nature.
Connects you with nature.
That's what fishing does for me. I fish out of a ditch if I can. But I understand that connection with nature, but not on mountaintops. So how did your thrill for adventure turn into a nightmare?
Your Honor, we found a new peak that none of us have ever been on. And so we woke up 5 a.m. in the morning, drove 2 hours to this new mountain. We got there, hiked 3 miles up to the top, and when we got to the top, it was gorgeous. You can picture a better hiking day.
That's amazing.
It is unbelievable. You can really see some spectacular stuff.
Now, what are we looking at here? How are we getting this view?
That's pretty much where we were hiking. That's my nifty little drone here. And
okay, so you took this view from your drone?
Yes, sir.
Do you take your drone on these hikes often?
So recently just acquired this drone.
So when your drone is taking these views, where are you?
I'm down there. So I'm down here with everybody else.
So Mr. Richardson, what went wrong here?
So, Your Honor, if you could see on the screen, there's a tiny little dot in the middle up towards the top. That's where we are standing. And I was standing, we got to the top of the mountain. There's this boulder, probably 10, 15 feet high. And when you're on top of a mountain, you want to get to the very top of the mountain. And so
because you need an extra 10 feet.
I made sure that this boulder was safe enough to climb. I know what I'm doing. I've rock climbed for years.
Did anybody else climb up there with you?
No, Your Honor.
No.
So you were kind of the guy seeking the summit peak.
Yes,
Yes, Your Honor. When you're on the top of a mountain, you want to get as high as you can get.
So you climb up on this rock.
Yes, Your Honor.
And then what happened?
And then I was just taking in the breathtaking views, and as Dean said, he always takes pictures, and he had his newfangled drone this time. And so he's flying it around, and I'm standing, arms wide open. I do the regular pose, but I clearly cannot. And so I was standing arms wide open, just taking in the world and trying to get a cool picture. Why wouldn't I? We're on top of a mountain.
Well, this is a special moment.
It is a special moment. That's what I'm trying to say. And then
You could have enjoyed it from the ground where the rest of us were.
why?
Do you
Standing
get the
there
same
watching.
view?
You had no
Do you
need.
get the same view down there on the ground with the rest of the people?
No, the feeling you get on top of the boulder is way more than you can experience if you're just on the ground. You want to get as high as you
So
can.
you're
get on
standing on top of the boulder
Like
like
that.
this,
Yes,
right?
Your Honor.
You're taking in all that nature has to give you, and then what happens?
Exactly. Then Dean starts flying his drone closer to
flying
us. I assume to get a better angle of the picture. He's taken pictures before. He knows what he's doing. So I'm
You see
standing
the
there.
drone flying around.
I see the drone flying
Okay.
around, yes. And so I'm standing there, arms wide open, waiting for the picture. And then the drone keeps getting closer and closer. And I'm just thinking, all right, Dean, it's getting a little close. And then it just beelines right towards me, hits me right in the gut. I fell off a boulder on top of a mountain.
So you broke your arm, you jammed your thumb, you messed up your ankle. What else?
And my rotator cuff is torn.
Mr. Black, is that what happened?
That's kind of what happened, but I just want to go ahead and say I was not at all responsible for that incident in that way because I was
Not
so the
responsible. Your drone knocked me over
The drone
off
was
the
in-
boulder.
Matthew, the drone was in home mode. It was in
Mr.
home mode.
Black,
I didn't have the controller in my.
You're controlling this drone, and the drone's flying around. It's in home mode.
Yes, sir.
Does home mode mean that it comes back to you?
Yeah. Well, so it's returning to you, controlled and stationary, like towards your direction, but it's not like out of control, going crazy.
It was in home
it's
mode,
not
supposed to be
like
going
I'm not
back to
holding the
you. Why did it
controller
go
down.
and hit
So,
me?
Mr. Richardson, you're standing on top of the boulder, and this drone slams into you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Then what happens?
When the drone hit me, I don't know if you're familiar with drones, Your Honor, but
I'm not.
it's basically a box with a camera with spinning knives on it.
There's a
And it flew straight towards me,
dramatic
hit me right in the
exaggeration.
gut.
It is
It was
not-
a horrible pain, and the force of the drone pushed
Blade.
me backwards off the boulder on top of the mountain.
Now, this drone is recording, right?
Yes, sir.
You've submitted a video. I want to see that video.
I
Let's
was
take a
not
look at it.
holding the controller when this happened, though.
Let's take a look at the drone. Didn't you see this thing coming at you?
I saw it coming towards me, but he was flying it before.
Your Honor, he was trying to hug it. It looked like he was trying to give it a hug.
Well, wait a minute.
I was trying to get a
Mr.
full
Black,
picture.
you saw it coming at him. You've got the control.
Exactly. Why didn't
I
he
was
steer
not
around
holding
me?
the controller.
Okay, where are the controls
So the
when this
controller
thing
was
is
sitting
flying?
down. I was just looking around. I had it home
Why
mode
was
to have
the
it.
controller not in your hands? You're flying.
It was on
shooting
home mode. It's
dangerous
on
piece of
autopilot.
Mr.
equipment.
Richardson, let me conduct this, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
I got to find out what the bottom of this is.
Rude
okay?
and can't hike.
Yes, Your Honor.
So the controls are on the ground and you're just watching this thing fly around?
Well, so I practiced this. Okay, I've worked on it. I practiced all these modes. I've seen a lot of this stuff.
And
I'm sorry, I
so
was
when
getting
it
a little
came
flustered.
back this way, this wasn't what you anticipated.
No. So
Now-
it came down a little more uncontrolled than I thought it was, but I did see it coming. And everyone else saw it coming. And everyone else kind of was like, move. Hey, it's coming. Matthew, it's coming. And Matthew just, did his thing, his Titanic deal, for no apparent reason. And
As I watched the video, and frankly, I want to look at it again, but I'm trying to figure out, what are you thinking when this thing is coming at you? Let's look at it. Now, as I watched that video and that drone's coming at you, I wanted to scream, get out of the way, get out of the way.
we did.
Right?
We did.
I love Leonardo DiCaprio's pose in Titanic. It's a beautiful thing. But there were no drones coming at him. And now you end up with a Titanic kind of injury.
Yes, Your Honor.
What happened to your arm?
It snapped. I could hear the snap when I fell off the
You should have
boulder.
moved.
And in addition to that, my left ankle, I can still barely move it. I'm in a brace still. My right thumb is all but broken.
So what's been the worst of your injuries?
The worst of my injury has for sure been my rotator cuff because it has kept me out of work for so long. I live paycheck to paycheck like most people, and not having this $29,000 from the last 5 months has put me in a very bad financial situation.
5 months out would break most families. Mr. Black, this is your tour, your adventure, your drone. Why not your fault?
I've repeatedly stated he should have moved and then I didn't have control of the drone.
So he should have protected you from a bad decision to put the controls
he should have protected
down?
himself. He should have protected himself.
Why weren't you driving the drone?
I had the controller was sitting on the ground, Matthew.
Smaller, it's equally as
I don't
dangerous.
understand. This is insane.
Do you have a drone license?
Of course I have a drone license. Yes, sir.
Are you able to operate that drone and show me how it works?
Extremely well, and I can show you. That's why I brought this today.
Okay, I want you to do that.
Yeah, okay. Let's go then.
Sheriff Matt, will you get the drone? Sure. So, Mr. Black, tell me how this drone works. Show this for me.
It's pretty simple. I'm going to activate it like this, and then I can lift it up. Get that good levitation.
It's like a giant wasp or something.
It's cool, isn't it? So imagine this thing a couple thousand feet up in the air taking pictures of you while you're on a beautiful hike.
You can fly it now, can't you?
I can fly it, Matt, because I'm holding the controller. You're going to help me win this case, sure enough. Keep talking.
When you have the controls, you control where it goes and how it turns?
Yes, sir.
Will it do this in home mode?
That's the point of home mode. It's like an autopilot thing, more or less. When I practiced on a soccer field, for instance, I hit home mode, it returned to me and landed like a butterfly next to me.
So had you been controlling it on that day the way you did today, would he ever have been struck by your drone? If you had the controls in your hand and did what you did today?
I would say that was a complete malfunction. You can't predict a malfunction.
That's true.
So how would I predict that maybe I would have been controlling it and it would have malfunctioned the same way and nailed my boy?
Well, you don't hold him responsible, right?
He could have moved. That's the main thing that no one's really getting at. Like, he could have moved.
What would have happened if I would have moved?
That does make sense now.
I would have moved. Everybody else would have moved.
I don't know how drones work. If I've moved left, then get hit with the drone, then Dean's gonna be like, oh, why'd you move? I was flying the drone.
Mr. Richardson, do you take any responsibility for your injuries?
I do not take responsibility for his drone hitting me. All the risks that I take when I go adventuring are calculated risks.
So, Mr. Black, you brought a witness with you, Miss Kayla Myers.
Yes, sir, I did.
Miss Myers, would you stand and come to the podium, please? You've been part of this adventure group?
Yes, I have, Your Honor.
Is it true? I mean, do you guys seek out danger as part of your adventures?
Well, we don't seek out danger. Him, on the other hand, he is constantly trying to one-up us. We call him the daredevil.
Just give me a couple examples you remember.
He always has to be the one who's jumping off and doing a flip. Like, we were going on the cliff, and we ended up jumping off of it into the water. He had to do, like, a bunch of flips, like...
This guy's not gonna jump.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, he is.
It's what you get out of it.
Woo! I just don't have those needs,
The
okay?
danger makes the...
So did you do these kind of dangerous things?
Yes, Your Honor, I did do those kind of dangerous things. I know how to safely do those things.
He pushes everything.
We're not the mountain kind of adventure squad. We are the mountain adventure squad. There's no limit on the adventure we do.
It is amazing to me. You make it through diving off of cliffs and a drone takes you out?
Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Myers, what do you remember from this day?
Matt being extra that he has to be on king on top of the world. He gets up on the boulder. We clearly see this thing coming at him. We're like, hey, move. Dean said, he's like, I don't have control, move. Like,
move.
I mean, it's pretty easy to dodge. It's a pretty big piece of material.
Miss Myers, you may be seated. You don't believe this was your fault?
No. It obviously was not my fault because I didn't have this in my hand. I set it on home mode. He knew I had it on home mode, and I told him to move. So if he moves, I'm not here right now.
And Mr. Richardson, you don't believe this was your fault. You believe it was his fault.
No, Your Honor. He should have been piloting the drone. He shouldn't have just let this autopilot pilot the drone back to us when we're on top of a mountain.
Gentlemen, I've heard enough, and I think I'm ready to render my decision. Gentlemen, in every personal injury case, the plaintiff, you, Mr. Richardson, have to prove three things. You've got to prove that Mr. Black was wrong. You got to prove that first, and that his wrong caused your injuries. You are clearly injured. Today, you've put up evidence that he was the one controlling the drone. And Mr. Black, the law charges you with responsibility when you put something like this in the air. The law says it's your drone. The law says it's your controls. The law says it's your responsibility to control this item so that people don't get hurt. You cannot shirk that responsibility simply by putting the controls on the ground. So the law holds you responsible for this. Mr. Richardson, I know you were knocked off this rock. You sustained terrible injuries, you've got medical bills, you've lost wages. I understand why you filed this lawsuit, but the law looks at you too and looks at your behavior. You had an opportunity to avoid this whole thing if you had not been on that rock. And the last opportunity, the law has a concept called last clear chance. And with last clear chance, you have an opportunity to save yourself even when someone does something wrong. Yep. The law evaluates and compares responsibility. I find you both responsible for this. But when you both are responsible 50-50, the law's unforgiving and you lose. I find for Mr. Black, that is my final verdict, and this matter is adjourned. Our attorneys across America just viewed this case for the first time. Let's hear what Chad Dudley has to say.
This case perfectly illustrates why we should read the directions and owner manuals for gadgets, especially ones that fly through the air at high altitudes and speeds. But this case is also a great example of the legal principle assumption of the risk. Even though the plaintiff was asked to move and warned of the danger, he failed to get out of the drone's path. He just stood there and now must accept the consequences for failing to move.